and I will turn it back over to Christine and Sierra to be able to share their presentation on Community Services Directory.
On a WebEx.
We're just going to pull up our presentation again.
Sure. And just let me know I've got it on my end as well, just in case. Perfect. We can see it now.
Perfect.
Excellent.
So good morning. Thank you everyone for joining us over your lunch hour.
And we really wanted to thank you, Jonathan, for reaching out to us to give us this opportunity to talk about the Community Services Directory.
Give me the papers off the printer, please. The jars and the candy.
My name is Sierra Stamper. I'm the Deployment and Special Events Coordinator here at the Shiloh Military Family Resource Center.
And I'm Christine. I'm the Employment Counselor here in Shiloh.
So for me as the Deployment Coordinator, right now in Shiloh, we do have a large deployment going on. And so in working with family support representatives on the base, we wanted to compile resources for families that are experiencing deployment, as many of them were requesting different types of services.
And as with many other MFRCs for the last couple of years here in Shiloh, we have been unable to host any in-person trade shows or events to support our military spouse and military family entrepreneurs.
So after discussing emerging community needs, Christine and I wanted to partner on the Community Service Directory by military families for military families.
So show of hands, how many of the MFRCs that are online today or in the chat, however you would like to communicate this, how many of you actually have both a deployment and employment program at your MFRC? Okay, so we're seeing a couple. So definitely this collaboration between employment and deployment can be duplicated with a lot of your centers. Thank you very much.
So our vision statement for the Community Service Directory is to provide a marketing tool for military family entrepreneurs to provide products and or services, and be a resource for military families looking for those products and or services.
And of course, with everything that we do here in Shiloh, we make sure that we also fulfill our MFRC mission statement, which is recognizing the uniqueness of the military lifestyle. The Shiloh MFRC will provide individuals, families, and our community with the tools they need to foster growth, belonging, and resilience. So this document checks all of those boxes.
And based on the photo here, who would love a tour of our building?
But keep in mind there's snow on the ground now and no leaves on the trees and much less sunshine. Okay, so any takers, just reach out to us after the WebEx and we'll see what we can do to arrange that.
So on this page you will see our registration form for the Community Service Directory. So there are conditions and parental consent sections there. I'll just go through the registration form because it's a little bit small and we can share these forms afterwards as well. So up at the top, we of course have date, contact information, the affiliation. So whether you're a military family, veteran family, or reservist.
And so we are very, very restrictive in who we allow to register for the Community Service Directory, in keeping with the tagline, by military families, for military families. Those are the only 3 groups that we are promoting their businesses.
And the next section we have asked service providers to select all the geographical areas in which they provide services. As Shiloh, there are many surrounding communities around that have military families. So that's an important distinction there. On the next page to the right, it's the types of services provided. So that ranges from yard, driveway maintenance, child minding, pet care, home-based businesses, food-based or food meal services. And then we have an open space for any additional services that don't fit those categories. And then at the very bottom, we have our conditions that we did have our attorney approved prior to creating this document. And those are, I acknowledge that the Shiloh Military Family Resource Center is not responsible for screening individuals who have requested or received the Community Service Directory. I acknowledge that it is my responsibility to collect payment for services. I acknowledge that the Community Service Directory will be distributed publicly. I acknowledge that it is my responsibility to update my information as required. So a signature there. And then for, we also have a section for consent of parent and guardians for service providers under the age of 18. So under that, I acknowledge that it is my responsibility to monitor and supervise interactions between my child and individuals whom they provide services to. Based on my acknowledgement as described above, I agree that my child may register in the Community Service Directory. I agree to all conditions outlined above in point 6, and then a parent guardian signature.
Now, we really wanted to make sure with the Community Service Directory that the MFRC was really operating at arm's length from any of the interactions between the service provider and the person accessing the services. So we are just the conduit for that connection, pretty much. Now, with the service directory, obviously we needed to reach out to our entrepreneur community. So we kind of did a call out for people to register. We used our Facebook page and our newsletter and word of mouth through our client base as well. And registration is really simple. In our newsletter, using that as an example, we have embedded a QR code. All the individual has to do is just scan that QR code, and it takes them directly to a SurveyMonkey questionnaire where we get them to fill out the form that you see on this slide. And then we have decided to keep the registration open and ongoing after our initial rollout this fall. So we have an ongoing process where people can still register their business with us. So this is the release form. So the process is, if you would like to get a copy, sorry, Sierra will talk about the process. We had to be really cautious about vicarious endorsement. So we wanted to make sure that people who were getting a copy of the Community Service Directory from us, that we were indemnified from any responsibility there. So about halfway down on this release form, there is a disclaimer, and it reads, I acknowledge that the Shiloh MFRC does not assess qualifications, endorse service providers or businesses, nor guarantee the quality of services received from any of the providers listed in the directory, and that it is my sole responsibility to screen, select, supervise, and pay those service providers.
And so our process is community members come into our center, they sign the release form that is available at our reception desk, and then from there our Community Service Directory is issued the Community Service Directory.
So if anyone would like copies of both the registration form for the entrepreneurs and the businesses, or the release form that kind of, protects the MFRC against any responsibility there, please just let us know either in the chat, or you can reach out to Jonathan or either Sierra or myself directly for copies of the forms if you would like to duplicate them in your community.
So what's next? So one thing that we're hoping to provide with the Community Service Directory is targeted marketing to the veteran and reservist communities.
We also are exploring making an electronic version available. We led with just a paper copy and people physically having to come into the center. So we're looking at, making everything available online.
We're also looking to promote the Community Service Directory and make copies and release forms available at upcoming special events.
That's pretty much it for the information that we have to share with you about the Community Service Directory and the process, why we got it started and what we're looking at moving forward. So are there any questions for us at this point?
I don't see any questions, but feel free to either unmute yourselves or write in the chat. Jill, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you so very much for the terrific presentation. I'm wondering specifically how many people you might have on your service directory, and subsequently, what would be the percentage of time that you might be spending to maintain and monitor that from an employee engagement perspective? Thank you.
So to answer your first question, we have 14 service providers currently in our community service directory.
And the outlay of time initially with starting it up, you know, the forms that we created probably took us a couple of hours. It had to be, you know, then get sent out to our attorney for approval, and creating the document, you know, literally we just put together a format that we can add to very easily moving forward. And the time commitment, we are checking the Survey Monkey once a week to see if there are any new exhibitors, vendors, entrepreneurs on there. And then it's quite easy just to add it in to the existing document. And we do use our volunteers to put together the booklets, that kind of thing. And I know once we shift to an electronic format, that will be even more efficient. So, excuse me, really the time commitment was a little heavier on the front end to create the work. Maintaining it is maybe a half an hour a week. Did that answer your question, Jill?
Thank you so much. Yes, it did.
Very welcome. And I see in the that request for a copy of the forms, absolutely. I'm just going to jot down your email address and we will get these to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Jill actually asked some of the questions that I had too. Oh, you got another question, Jill.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think they say things come in threes. I was just wondering, so looking at potentially offering something like that in our community here at Halifax and region, and not to dissuade from the 14 organizations that you currently have, did you have a vision, or do you have like a future goal of thinking like, you know, maybe you would have like 25, 50? Did that factor into any of your thought process and timing to manage that? Thank you.
We didn't have a number per se in mind. What we used as our jumping off point was the last time that we did an in-person entrepreneur trade show in the MFRC. So that would have been the fall of 2019. We kind of looked at how many entrepreneurs did we have register for that event, and that we wanted to be able to duplicate that number. So we are almost there, you know, because our community has certainly shifted since 2019 with postings out, postings in. So there's been a shift there, but that was the number that we wanted to hit. Was we wanted to duplicate our last in-person entrepreneur event. So we wanted to, I think more so rather than an overall number, we wanted to make sure that community members would have someone accessible in each kind of category. If I need a babysitter, if I need someone to shovel my driveway or cut my lawn in the summer, and do I have someone who, you know, does manicures and all of the services that Sierra is hearing about from deployed spouses. We wanted to make sure we were able to match what the emergent need was in the community. So kind of those were our two benchmarks, duplicating our last in-person event, as well as being able to match the requests for services that were coming in. Now, Jonathan, did you have any questions that haven't been addressed yet?
Well, just while you were mentioning that you're looking to target veteran communities and a few other communities, what kinds of, is this based on what you're hearing from your families in terms of there continuing to be a need out there in certain service areas, or is it just because you've noticed several service areas out there that might be of interest to families?
We have a number of veterans that when they release from the military, despite the weather, And despite mosquitoes and the humidex in the summer, despite all of those things, a lot of veterans who are actually staying in the area when they release from the military. So we want to be able to maintain that contact with that community and to be able to provide this entrepreneur option for them to promote their businesses. And as well with the connection with Prince's Operation Entrepreneur and the community members that are registering and the uptake in their training, we have that awareness. There's a number of veteran entrepreneurs in our catchment area that we want to be able to reach with this program.
Okay, excellent. And I know you mentioned a few examples of some of the services that they provide, but within your community service directory, can you just kind of outline some of the ones that you've already brought on board in terms of the types of services?
So of the 14, we have 3 child minding services. Home-based businesses, which ranges from beauty to photography, many beauty and photography. We have 8 home-based businesses. We have 2 pet care and 1 other, which is a salon service that didn't quite fit into the other categories.
The pet care is really popular. It seems that when you move to Shiloh, if you don't already have a dog, you're issued one when you get to base. So that one was certainly really popular as a request for services for families.
As for childcare as well, as I mentioned with the major deployment, solo parenting is the top challenge. So that was something that I was particularly hoping that we had many service providers on the list. And so gratefully we were able to have 3 of those for families to choose from.
Excellent. That's great.
Yeah, that's a synopsis of who we have so far. We're currently working on, we have an equine photographer. I have personal interest in getting her on board so that I can access her services. And we also have a massage therapist that just opened up in Shiloh, and she's a military spouse. So
Amazing.
as these individuals come to our attention, we are recruiting them specifically to market themselves in the directory.
Great. Excellent. And Jill, you had another question.
Now I'm hogging the webinar. Sorry.
That's okay.
You should just come out, Jill. Come for a visit.
That's it. That sounds good. I'll leave tomorrow. Thank you. Quick question for you. So looking ahead, like if you had some people that had some perhaps negative feedback, how would you determine who you would remove from your community service directory? How would you manage that?
That's a very good question, Jill. We're desperately hoping that doesn't become an issue that we have to address, but we are certainly flagging that now after you have asked that question. But part of the reason why we wanted to have a disclaimer was so that we don't hold any responsibility for bad service or someone not showing up and that kind of thing. I believe our rough guidelines at this point is we would try to mediate initially, perhaps have a conversation with both the service provider and the recipient of the service to determine, if there's something that we can help mitigate. And after that, depending on the seriousness of the concern, that we would, at that point discuss with the both parties the removal of that individual from the directory. But we would try to resolve it, make sure that both the military service provider and the person getting the services, see if we could resolve it initially just at our level before having to remove someone. But again, we really don't want to have to, we really hope that doesn't become an issue that we have to address, but we are prepared certainly to remove them if there's inappropriateness or, unprofessional behavior.
You mentioned having publicized it on social media and a few other fora. Is there any particular location that you find is more useful for military families to access this, or easier for you to maintain updates? I know you mentioned the digital aspect to come in that.
So far, having the hard copy available at the MFRC gives us an opportunity to kind of see who the population is that are looking for services. So as the individual comes in, it gives us a chance in person to have a conversation with them, you know, to see if we can plug them into other services that they might not even be aware that we have here at the MFRC. So as we are strictly hard copy, you know, it's here at the MFRC, so we're kind of controlling that flow of traffic into our building. And I know that Sierra is also our special events coordinator, having them available at special events too.
Yeah, and so far we have had, I believe, 5 community members that have come in to get copies of the community service directory. And so maybe once we shift to a digital version, that number might increase. But for now, because it is new, we're happy with 5.
Yeah, and electronically, the most foot traffic, if that's appropriate to say, foot traffic electronically, that we get is on our Facebook page, actually.
Excellent. I think Annie, I think you have your hand up.
I have a question going back to taking people out of the directory. So what if some of the services are like families with home base, like you said earlier, but then they're posted out? Like, who's going to keep track on if the service is still available in your community?
Yes, so that is part of the disclaimer that we do have. It is the service provider's responsibility to let us know if they are being posted out. And so I guess a way that will come on their radar is if they're getting calls and contacts from the Shiloh community. But we are also looking to update it quarterly.
And verify the availability and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, I'm sitting here smiling in response to individuals when they ask questions. Are we still visible, or is
Yes.
it just our...
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry,
You're visible to me, so I'm pretty sure that most people can still see you.
Okay. Sorry.
Yep.
Again, Jonathan, you allowed me to use the excuse at the beginning that my fingers are cold. You know, also a screen kind of disappeared on us, so I wasn't sure. So apologies. You see why we led with a hard copy rather than the electronic copy, not my comfort zone.
Absolutely. No, it's always good to have a backup, no matter how good your electronics are. It's great.
And Jonathan, I have a question for you. Would we be able to capture the chat so that we don't miss anyone who wanted a copy of the forms that we use?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I can send you a copy of the chat. And yeah, I'll like I mentioned in the chat, I'm happy to send along the forms as well. After each web exchange, as you all know, I record them, and then I send out the recording to the folks who have joined us, just in case you wanted to review something, or I also send it out to the individuals who have attended previous web exchanges in case they weren't able to make this one but would still like to watch it. And so along with that recording, I usually send any documents associated, so I can send the forms as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for facilitating that, Jonathan.
Yeah, no problem. Right, are there any other questions? I'm just going to look through the list of participants here to see for any hands up. I didn't see any other questions in the chat.
Well, and Sierra and I would like to thank very much for some of the questions have really prompted us to be giving consideration to, how do we deal with someone who is, you know, not living up to their end of these agreements? So that's definitely something that moving forward we will give more consideration to. But we really appreciate some of the questions that, you know, have kind of highlighted some things that we need to give space to. Thank you.
Well, I was really amazed at how how little time it takes you to maintain it, and the fact that you're able to use volunteers to help check in on some of those things. You know, you said kind of half an hour a week, and that, because that was one of my questions, is how difficult is this to set up? And it sounds like it was pretty straightforward. And given that you've already provided a template for other people to reuse at their MFRC, that makes it all the much easier.
Well, and SurveyMonkey certainly makes it easy. You know,
Mhm.
we have the SurveyMonkey app on our phones, so it's just really quick to go in and see if there's any new surveys that have been added to that group. And then, you know, at that point, it's just really simple. So it sometimes it's even less than a half an hour just to monitor any new members. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Excellent. All right, and you've got lots of thank yous in the chat there as well. So I'll end it for today. Sierra and Christine, if you could just stay on the line after everybody signs off, just so that I can check in with you about
Are we in
how you.
trouble?
Oh no, it's not being in trouble. I wanna check in and see how you felt like the session went. So I often do that with presenters, just to see how we can improve things for the future. So thank you both so much, and for everybody who showed up today. And again, I'll be following up with a video in the next few days.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.